Serrated. Written and produced by Steve Gray. Salt spray driven by high sea winds stung Captain Silas's face. The taste of brine and fear, a tasty cocktail on his tongue. Below deck of the modern-day brigantine, and clinging to the railing, were 4 figures, silhouetted against the moistened black walls. Their faces, illuminated by the meager moonlight slicing its rays through the window blinds, were a look of terror and pleading. Silas, however, felt only the cold satisfaction of a job well done, or rather, almost well done. "What is this?" stammered young Emily, her voice barely a whisper above the sea wind's howl. Her red hair was plastered to her pale cheek. "Yes, Silas," growled Mark, the burly ex-con, his bravado now a thin veneer over palpable fear. "What the fuck are you doing?" His gaze drifted to the churning water visible through the blinds, then back to Silas. Beside Mark, Jessica, a sharp-tongued journalist, her usual cynical glare replaced with a horrifying vulnerability, whimpered. "What did you put in our drinks, you son of a bitch? What are you doing, you sick bastard?" Silas chuckled. A harsh, grating sound that cut through the night. "Well, my dearest, you are a special project." He gestured with his hand, a cruel parody of a conductor leading an orchestra. "Something very special." The fourth, a quiet, unassuming accountant named Arthur, said nothing, his eyes fixed on the endless dark expanse of the sea, a silent acceptance of his fate. "It's all about the insurance, you see," Silas explained, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He leaned over the railing, his breath hot on Emily's face. 4 accidental drownings, you see. A tragic accident. A hefty payout. Enough to pay off my fucking debts, Cupcake. Buy a new boat. And maybe even retire. Mark spat on the deck. "You piece of shit, Silas." Silas grinned, revealing teeth yellowed and chipped like shards of bone. "Language, Mark. Well, what does language matter anyway? You're all going to be very quiet soon." He produced a rusty crowbar from beneath his oilskins, its metallic gleam reflecting the moonlight like a malevolent, shining eye. One by one, he dispatched them. The sounds, the sickening thuds, the gurgles, the desperate cries were swallowed by the vastness of the ocean and the roar of the choppy waves. After the horrendous deed was done, he threw them over the wet and slick side decks. Silas watched as their bodies disappeared beneath the waves, rocketing downwards. Brief flickers as their form were distorted by the seething waters. And then into the inky blackness they sunk. He wiped his brow, now feeling the satisfaction of a job well done. A grim, nauseating triumph. But even as he savored his self-perceived victory, a deep, primal unease settled in his gut. The waves felt different. In the deepest and blackest section of the ocean floor, below the distance of where the gurgling of Silas's boat motor was firing back into action after having been off for the time that he did his nasty deed, the emaciated, nearly mummified remains of a colossal great white shark, long deceased, lay on the seabed. For some time, it had been a silent monument to nature's fury, its massive frame gradually consumed by the tireless gnawing of sea life, yet preserved overall by the extreme frigid temperatures of the depths. But the ocean holds secrets darker than the abysmal plain, and the currents carried more than just sand and silt. Rage and anguish coalescing into a malevolent force found an unlikely conduit in the dead, decaying shark. The 4 of Silas's victims' life essences bonded into a cohesive entity and claimed a home inside the shark. The great white, once a creature of terrifying beauty, now pulsed with a grisly, unnatural energy. The shadows in its cavernous eye sockets seemed to writhe, its wasted cartilage rippling with unnatural strength. The collective hatred stirring the milky sand of the surrounding ocean floor and amplified by the depths, fueled a dreaded and horrifying resurrection. The shark's sandpaper-like skin, once shiny and gray, was now a patchwork of festering sores and peeling meat, a grisly parody of its former self. Its teeth, sharp and white, were replaced by serrated shards of blackened bone, sharp as obsidian knives. A low, guttural moan, a tumult of vengeful souls, emanated from its gaping maw. It was no longer a predator, but a vicious underwater weapon of these four vengeful spirits, guided by the burning desire for reprisal. The swirling and vibrations in the water were manifesting something now. Something that will now commence. A hunt. A couple of months later, on a warm and breezy Gulf evening, the boat was now bobbing gently on the waves. A new and pristine boat, bought with ill-gotten insurance blood money. The same waves, in fact, that had swallowed 4 sad souls some time ago. Silas hadn't felt the sea air so cold since then. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, the wind whipping strands into his eyes. Recollection of his deeds and the payout that resulted. The insurance check, fat and satisfying, was safely tucked away in his offshore account. Justice, he told himself, was a slow boat. He'd chosen this spot meticulously, a treacherous reef hidden beneath deceptive waters. The perfect place to erase 4 lives, and the perfect place, he'd foolishly thought, to forget them. But the memory clung to him, a barnacle refusing to be scraped away. It wasn't guilt exactly, not the kind that kept him awake at night. It was something colder, something more akin to dread, something magnetic that drew him to this spot, something beckoning in his mind. He'd brought a bottle of cheap and nasty rum, a pathetic attempt to drown his growing sick feeling, but he hadn't touched it. Instead, he stared into the water, the dark sapphire surface, deceptively tranquil currently. Beneath, though, he knew, or at least thought he knew, there was a silent graveyard. A graveyard he'd made possible with his own hands. He remembered their faces, fleetingly. The scared whimpers of the young women, the gruff silence of the older man, the contemptuous chatter of the ex-con. At their memorials, he played the grieving captain perfectly, shedding convincing tears. He'd even received condolences. Today, however, there were no comforting lies. Today, only the endless expanse of the ocean, the relentless rhythm of the waves, and a growing certainty that he was about to face something dark, something vengeful, something that was rising not only from the depths of the sea, but from the murky depths of his own conscience. He felt a prickling on his skin, a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the sea air. He looked down at his hands, noticing for the first time the faint, almost imperceptible tremor in them. From the depths, a faint sound reached him, a low, guttural moan carried on the wind. It wasn't the sea. It wasn't the wind. It was something else. Silas gripped the railing of his new boat, Serrated, his knuckles white. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and bruised purple. The moan grew louder, closer. Could almost feel it now, a presence in the water just beneath the surface. A presence that was reaching for him. He didn't scream. He couldn't. He just sat there, rigid with terror as the darkness closed in, mirroring the darkness that now consumed him. The Serrated swayed gently, cradling him in its embrace, as the sounds from below deepened into a symphony of rising, ravenous roaring. Silas, paralyzed by terror, watched helplessly as the monstrous creature smashed against his boat. The impact shattered the hull, sending splinters of wood flying into the air. The boat groaned, then began to sink beneath the relentless assault of the avenging shark, its onyx-like serrated teeth ripping into the hull of his new boat. He tried to jump overboard. To what end is unclear, but the shark was moving fast. It surged out of the water, its decaying jaws snapping shut around the boat's railing, a death rattle trapped in its monstrous maw. The sound of splintering wood and sheet metal and Silas's screams were a grotesque counterpoint to the ocean's fury. Inside the shark's gaping mouth, a spectral chorus echoed, the voices of his victims, a cacophony of agony and revenge. A woman's shriek was the highest, a chilling counterpoint to the guttural growls of Mark. Jessica's sneering voice, twisted into a cry of vengeance, was somehow the most chilling. Her journalistic cynicism morphed into a deadly accuracy as she seemed to narrate Silas's slow and agonizing demise. Arthur's silent presence, meanwhile, was the most terrifying of all. A silent scream of injustice, a spectral weight pushing Silas closer to oblivion. The shark thrashed its body, a whirlwind of phosphorescent green and rotting flesh. The boat, now almost completely submerged, disappeared beneath the waves, taking Silas down with it. He struggled, his lungs burning, his pleas lost in the rage of the storm. The shark, driven by its spectral passengers, crushed the boat, tearing it to pieces. Silas's final screams, choked and broken, were consumed by the ocean. The shark, its dark purpose fulfilled, then sank into the depths. Its spectral passengers finally finding a measure of peace in this horrific vengeance. The storm subsided, leaving behind a slick of gallons of blood and over a ton of debris. The ocean, once disturbed, returned to its deceptive calm, concealing its terrible secret now guarded. The tale of Captain Silas and the possessed shark became a whispered legend among the fishermen, a dark cautionary fable about greed and the unforgiving nature of the sea. Some say that on moonless nights, the ghostly shape of the shark can still be seen circling the waters where Silas met his end. A silent reminder that even in death, justice can find its way, however monstrous. And when the sea whispers secrets to the lonely quiet and foaming shores, one can almost hear the vengeful chorus of the four echoing in the depths, the mournful cries, a speaking to the unrelenting power of the ocean, and the even more fearsome power of vengeance beyond the grave.